Hello everyone, my name is Emily Lewis and I am a Children's Library Associate at the National Public Library Edmonton Pike Branch. Thank you for joining me today in this webinar over the importance of representation and diversity in youth literature. Though I am sure some of you are already familiar with this topic if you have already been working with children and teens in libraries, I hope this webinar will help those of you who are less familiar with either youth literature or the various aspects of diversity better understand why we as library professionals need to ensure that the materials we provide our patrons are good quality representations of the diverse populations that we serve. Also, I hope this webinar teaches you about some of the different aspects of diversity and representation that you may not have already been aware of, which will hopefully guide you when directly interacting with patrons as well. And without further ado, let's begin. So, what exactly is representation and diversity? Representation is the description or portrayal of someone or something in a particular way or as being of a certain nature, while diversity is the practice or quality of including or involving people from a range of different social and ethnic backgrounds and of different genders, sexual orientations, etc. Diversity can include race, ethnicity, religion, sexuality, gender, ability, mental health, culture, and more, which are all aspects that make people different or similar to one another. These aspects are often important parts of individuals' identities, which makes representation so crucial. Many groups have been historically underrepresented in American culture and society, which has resulted in racism, misogyny, homophobia, transphobia, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and numerous other forms of prejudice and hate that have in turn greatly hurt minorities and people of diverse backgrounds. So it is our job as library professionals to ensure that people of all diverse backgrounds feel welcome and wanted in libraries, and having diverse and accurate representations of these people and books in our collections is a great step towards doing that. In order to help overcome the biases, prejudice, and hate that so negatively impact our world, it is vital that we help shape a better future. And children are a great way to do that. They are the world's future, and by giving them diverse, representative books from an early age, we can hopefully help them develop respect, empathy, and understanding for everyone around them, which may stay with them into adulthood and prevent them from developing negative prejudices about people who are different from themselves. Youth literature is foundational to many children's understanding of the world and the people around them, so diverse and representative books can make a big difference in what they grow to believe and how they treat others, which makes our jobs as library professionals all the more important. Diverse youth literature helps teach kids and teens about the different types of people in the world. It can introduce them to ideas and concepts that they may not have the chance to learn about from their personal experiences. This can allow them to understand perspectives different from their own, which can foster empathy and respect that they will likely then employ when they're interacting with their peers, family, and other people in their lives. Diverse youth literature can also help kids and teens see themselves in books, which may encourage them to keep reading and make them feel welcomed in libraries. According to the School Library Journal, in 2018, it was found that 50% of the children's books published that year depicted white characters, while 27% depicted animals or inhuman characters. This left only 10% for African or African American characters, 7% for Asian Pacific Islander or Asian Pacific American characters, 5% for Latinx characters, and 1% for American Indian or First Nations characters, which, while it is an improvement over past diversity statistics, is evidence of a clear imbalance of representation of minority groups in youth literature. As a result, library collections may often reflect this imbalance, making it hard for children to find materials that they relate to and see themselves in. Therefore, it is imperative that we as library professionals make sure that we seek out and select diverse items for our library's collections that children from diverse groups will feel represented by, while also making sure that the depictions of diverse individuals are accurate and high-quality representations. Also, representation doesn't just have to revolve around the characters and settings featured in books. Choosing materials with diverse authors and illustrators is just as important, as those individuals are more likely to be the best at giving voices to their people than a creator who is not part of the group that they are featuring in their story. Plus, purchasing books from diverse individuals may help encourage publishers to continue diversifying who they work with and what they put out for children. Not to mention the fact that children reading these books may see that someone like them created something great and could encourage them to create their own stories and art, which is always a positive. Here are some further details about some of the different aspects of diversity, plus some good examples of children's books that are positive, good quality representations of different people in those categories. Race is often based on the physical and sometimes social traits that certain groups of people share, such as skin color, hair texture, facial features, and so on. It is often a huge part of an individual's identity and is one of the most important things that needs to be represented in youth literature. The main racial groups in America include American Indian or Alaska Native, Asian, Black or African American, Hispanic or Latino, Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander, and white, and plus biracial/multiracial people who may identify as two or more of these races. Here are a few good examples of how different races can be depicted in children's books. Religion can be an integral aspect of many people's identities, even from a young age. For some people, it is something they choose later in life to follow or stop following, while others are born and raised in it, and even others have no involvement in it. Regardless, it is important that children both learn about other religions and that those who do belong to a religion can find good books about that religion that are age appropriate. Popular religions in America include Buddhism, Christianity, Hinduism, Islam, and Judaism, though many others exist. Here are some good examples of some of the different religions depicted in children's books. Sexuality and sexual orientation is a huge part of most people's identities, and while children may not yet be fully aware of or acting upon this aspect of their identities yet, it is still important to provide them with books that are representative of the LGBTQIA+ community. This can help them learn about the different types of relationships that exist, which can make them more understanding of others and their sexual orientations and family dynamics, and it can help guide them in figuring out their own feelings as they get older. Plus, for children who already identify under one sexual orientation, it can be encouraging to see people like them in the books that they read. Here are a few good examples of the different types of sexualities and sexual orientations that have been depicted in children's books. Gender is another important category that people use to identify themselves and others, and while males and females are pretty well represented in books, as many children's book characters are categorized as boys or girls, it is important that a library's collection also include diverse books about transgender, genderqueer, multigender, non-binary, and gender-fluid people. This can help children better understand that not everyone fits into a cisgender role, which can make them more empathetic to those people who are different from themselves, or it may help them feel seen and understood if they also do not feel like they fit into a typical male-female box. Also, books about cisgender people that still break the typical gender norms and stereotypes can be just as important, such as ones that encourage boys to be in touch with their feelings or girls to be strong leaders. Here are a few good examples of how different genders can be depicted in children's books. Differently able people often go underrepresented in our society in general, whether it be through culture, art, or physical and mental accessibility. Therefore, it is important for library professionals to try their best to make sure that people with different abilities are at least represented in library collections. Children should have access to books that involve stories and characters with physical and neurological abilities and differences. This can teach kids about people who are differently abled while also allowing children who are themselves differently abled to feel represented. Here are a few good examples of differently abled people in children's books. Mental health is another aspect of diversity that is imperative for children to learn about. Whether they personally suffer from mental illness or trauma, or if they have a friend or family member that does, or they don't yet know anyone suffering from a mental illness, it is good for them to have an understanding of how to deal with certain emotions and thoughts, how to care for their own mental health, and how to have compassion for others' mental health. The different types of mental illnesses can vary greatly, but books explaining depression, anxiety, some disorders, and the concept of therapy are good starts towards teaching children about the diversity of mental health as well as helping them with their own mental health. Here are a few good examples of mental health being depicted in children's books. Ethnicity can involve various factors, but one of the key parts is where a person is from, whether they were born there or are a newer generation of people with ancestors or direct family members from that original place. Many children's ethnicity is a part of their identity, that their family may follow traditions that go along with what is or what was done where they were originally from, making it an integral part of who they are. It often connects to nationality, race, and culture. Children of all diverse ethnicities should be able to read books that reflect their own ethnicities, while also getting to learn about others. This is an important part, especially for immigrant children or children whose parents or grandparents are immigrants, so children's books should also include stories of immigrants. Here are some good examples of different ethnicities being depicted in children's books. There are countless cultures throughout the world, and everyone often fits into one or more culture in some way or another, whether it be because of what race or ethnicity they are, where they are from or where they now live, what they enjoy doing, who they know, and so much more. But since there are so many different cultures, children need to know about the cultures that are not like their own. Therefore, library professionals should include multicultural books in their collections, as well as books that focus on an individual culture. This can help children learn about new cultures, as well as see the culture they are already familiar with represented in what they read. Here are a few good examples of different cultures and multiculturalism in children's books. But of course, not every book featuring diverse characters, settings, or creators is guaranteed to be good. Some may be mediocre and some may even be inaccurate and offensive. As library professionals, we must carefully consider which books we add to our collections and whether or not they are good quality works or if they are appropriate and accurate enough for children. A great place to look are lists of award-winning and nominated books that are created by organizations devoted to promoting diversity in literature. The Pura Belpepre Awards, John Newbery Awards, Caldecott Awards, Coretta Scott King Awards, Michael L. Prince Awards, Stonewall Awards, and Asian/Pacific American Awards are just a few of the many award lists to use that can be helpful in selecting good, diverse books. Be on the lookout for any problematic parts in books that may be racist, homophobic, transphobic, misogynistic, anti-Semitic, Islamophobic, etc. You may not always see it from your personal perspective initially, especially if you do not personally identify with a certain community. So reading reviews can also help weed out the negative choices, as many reviewers are likely to give a good and different perspective on whether or not a book promotes prejudice and stereotypes. Here are a few examples of children's books to avoid. These books have been called out for racist and stereotypical illustrations or use of language, as well as glossing over some ideas of slavery. Here are some things to ask yourself when deciding whether or not a book is a good representation of diversity. What are the minorities' roles in this story? Are there stereotypes present? Is the representation culturally authentic? What is the bigger context of the story? Who has power and agency in the story? As we reach the end of this webinar, I would like to leave you with a few further recommendations to help you with maintaining a diverse library collection and when interacting with diverse community members. Overcome your personal biases. Try to put yourself in someone else's shoes and imagine how you would feel if you were part of that person's community. Get to know the diverse people around you to better understand what they want and need, especially children who are underrepresented in books and in your library. They can have fantastic insight that you may not get from anyone else. While adding to your collection to maintain diversity, make sure you also weed the collection to remove out-of-date, unnecessary, and poor quality materials. Introduce children to diverse books through storytime and programming, both to reach the ones who may be otherwise underrepresented and to reach the ones who need to learn about people different from themselves. Try to diversify what you recommend to readers' advisory. You may never know what good it could do to introduce someone to diverse materials. And finally, simply listen and pay attention to people. Every library user deserves for their voice to be heard, regardless of who they are. You can truly learn the most from listening to your library community, which will help you better serve them. Thank you for joining me in this webinar over the importance of representation and diversity in children's literature. I hope this has given you some more insight on the various ways diversity can be expressed through books, which may help guide you in your collection development, readers advisory, story times, and programming. Have a great day!